What's up, guys? Right now we're going to be going over lesson 1.6, how to multiply integers. Alrighty, so let's start with some definitions. First off, we'll start with the distributive property. So when using multiplication, a times b plus c is equal to a times b plus b times c. Or, if we want to think of this with numbers, 2 times 1 plus 3 is equal to 2 times 1 plus 2 times 3. So what we're really seeing here is that the a is going to be distributed to these two numbers, and they're going to become together to become 1. Or this 2 is going to be distributed to this 1 and then distributed to this 3. So for example, I had like a 2 times 5 plus 7. This would be equal to 2 times 5 plus 2 times 7. Awesome. And then the identity property. So for the identity property, 1 times any number equals that number, or 1 times a is always equal to a. So you get this is probably pretty familiar to you guys because you've always seen that 1 times any number equals that number, like 1 times 5 is equal to 5, 1 times negative 7 is equal to negative 7, and so on and so forth. There's plenty of examples for that one. Alrighty, so those are our two definitions, so let's go into multiplying integers. So what happens when we multiply integers? When multiplying integers, if the signs are the same, the product will be positive. If the signs are different, the product will be negative. So let's see. If we have a positive and a positive, this is always going to equal a positive. If we have a positive and a negative, this will be negative. If we have a negative and a positive, if we have a negative and a positive, this too would be negative. And then if we have a negative and a negative, this would be positive. Now that's a little tricky one right there that people get confused. So let's remember, a negative times a negative will equal a positive. So let's start thinking about this, but remembering that multiplication is repeated addition. So let's see here. Let's think if we can make sense to why that we would get a positive number when we multiply positive numbers together. Well, so when we're multiplying, we're really just saying that we have groups of something, right? So if we have 3 times 5, we're really just saying that we have 5 groups with 3 in each of them, right? All right, so we break it down like this. Well, let's notice that these are all positive numbers, right? So there's no way that we could get a negative number from that. So that would make sense as to why 2 positive numbers would equal a positive number. All right, now how about negative numbers here? So if I have 5 times negative 3, I would have I would have negative 3 groupings of 5. Or we could just kind of switch this around here, say negative 3 times 5, or 5 groupings of negative 3. So we'd have negative 3, negative 3, negative 3, negative 3, and finally negative 3. Now what can we notice from this? Well, all of these numbers are negative. So obviously our product would be negative, right? We can't get a positive number if we're only adding together negative numbers. So it would be like negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3. Alrighty, so that explains that one there. But how about the tricky one, a negative times a negative? Well, for that, you're really going to have to trust me a little bit, but let's look at it. So we have a negative 5 times negative 5. All right, so we're going to have negative 5 groups of negative 5, or the opposite of negative 5 groups. So if we have negative groups of negative 5 plus negative 5, negative 5, negative 5, and negative 5, see if we add these all up together, we would get negative times negative 25. Which remember, since we had that negative at the beginning, this is going to make it positive, and we're going to have to switch that sign to a positive. So this would become positive 25. So basically, these two negative signs would combine to make a positive sign. All right, hopefully that explains why we get positive numbers when we multiply two negative numbers together. So let's go into some examples. So we want to use a number line to show negative 10 times negative 3. All right, so what is that? So this is saying we have negative 10 groups of negative 3. All right, or I think I'm actually going to do it the other way. We have negative 3 groups. We have negative 3 groups of negative 10. All right, the reason I'm just doing that is because I didn't want to make 10 groups of that, sorry. Okay, so let's look at what we got here on our number line. So let's remember, we're multiplying two negative numbers together, so our product should be positive, right? Okay, so let's see here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna count over that 10 3 times. So we're gonna have that one hop here. This is a value of 10. One hop here. This is a value of 10. One hop here. And finally, this is a value of 10. So what's it look like we have up there? Well, we have our three groupings of 10 right here. We have our three groupings of 10. Now, we already knew to make them positive because this is two negative numbers combining, right? So what do we look at here? Well, where are we on our number line? Well, what we reach at this point right here is 30. So that would mean that negative 10 times negative 3 is equal to 30. Awesome. So we also want to show the same thing using multiplication properties. Alrighty, so we have negative 10 times negative 3. Well, now let's make this into our groups again, right? So we're going to have a negative on the outside, and then we'll make three groups of negative 10. All right, we'll be adding these together here. So we get negative of negative 30. And let's remember that we're multiplying a negative times a negative, we're going to get a positive. So negative of negative 30 would be equal to positive 30. That's kind of a little example there of how we can get the same answer using two different methods. All right, so let's look at some more examples here. So for starters, negative 6 times negative 2. Well, let's see here. Let's notice we have two negative signs, right? So our answer is going to be positive. Okay, so we could look at this using our groups. Let's make this up again. So we're going to have 6 groups of negative 2. All right, so we have negative 2 plus 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 negative 2. Or we have, write it down here, we have negative of negative 12. This would be equal to positive 12 because we have a negative times a negative number. So it's negative 6 times negative 2 would be equal to positive 12. All right, now let's look at a 3-variable problem here. So when working with a 3-variable problem, we're going to want to work from the left to the right. And the reason we're doing this is because of PEMDAS. Now, if you guys remember PEMDAS, that stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Sorry, I forgot the D there for a second. Okay, so we're going to start moving from the left to the right because this is all multiplication. So let's start with 5 times negative 9. I'm just going to put this in parentheses here. So 5 times negative 9 would be equal to negative 45, right? Because we have a negative times a positive, so we would know that that would be a negative number. So now we have negative 45 times negative 2. All right, so what is negative 45 times negative 2? Well, if we remember, a positive times a positive equals a positive, but also a, what did I do? Sorry about that. But also a negative times a negative would equal a positive. So negative 45 times negative 2 would be equal to 90, right? Because 45 times 2 is equal to 90, and we're just getting rid of those signs there. All right, so what's that mean? That means 5 times negative 9 times negative 2 would be equal to 90. All right, so which product is greater? Negative 4 times negative 6 or negative 7 times negative 8? Now, when we're looking at this here, we can either solve out the entire multiplications there, or we can look at our signs. So let's remember, a negative times a negative is going to equal a positive, right? And a negative times a positive would equal a negative. So if our value for A is positive and our value for B is negative, well, then that would mean that A would be greater than B, right? Because A is positive and B is negative. So that means that negative 4 times negative 6 would be greater than, I'm running out of room here, is greater than negative 7 times 8. All right, so that's how we could see there using our kind of principles of what multiplication means to find out which values are greater. All right, so our practice problems. So we want to find negative 1 times negative 24. We want to use a number line to show negative 32 times 2, And then we want to find out which of these products are equal to negative 6 times 7. And we want to explain without finding the total product. So what we're going to do on that problem is we're going to remember our operations using our negative and positive signs, and we're also going to remember our factors. So that's something like 6 is equal to 3 times 2, and that might help you solve a few of those problems down there. Alrighty guys, good luck on those, and I hope to see you all in class tomorrow.